This fucking game is absolutely, and I'm not kidding you, fucking ungodly, fucking incredible. I believe it will be the Final Fantasy that people talk about decades from now. The way that we talk about Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VI. I think Soken will be honored for best music in a video game by the Game Awards, and I do believe that he will win the Grammy for interactive video game music. That's how good this music is. This game is insane. I've taken time away from the demo to really process the experience, and even 2-ish hours with it, I'm still reverberating 24 hours later. It's going to be such a special game. I've split this video up into 2 sections. Non-spoiler, for those of you that don't want to touch spoilers, just me and you talking, no videos, just the chat, and a deeply spoilery section. Because holy fuck, I need to speak to somebody about what I saw and heard in this game. And that's just the first 2.5 hours. This game is beautiful. We've heard this the last couple years about a game that would be worth buying a PlayStation 5 for. This is the first game I've played in the PS5's lifecycle that truly feels like it was made for the PlayStation 5 and was worthy of the purchase of that PlayStation 5. The only thing I really strongly dislike is the motion blur when spinning the camera. I'm really surprised there's no option to turn that off unless I missed it in the settings menu, which I don't think I did. Soken is crushing the music. Like, think Final Fantasy XIV, if you've played that. Think of your favorite little ditty from that game. Then I want you to crank that up to about 1,000. That's the music in this game. Even the chill, slow pieces feel so fresh, so unique, so effervescent. My brain melted, and I had to pick it up off the floor when I listened to some of these choruses that he included in this game. Holy hell, it peels the paint off the walls. Beautiful, peaceful, violent, electric, and foreboding, and everything in between. This is the most serious Final Fantasy game I've played since starting the series with Final Fantasy VII in the late 90s. Serious, brooding, dark, gritty, Game of Thrones in the Final Fantasy universe, and it feels so good. The game has a story, a lot of it. So far in the opening hours, it's very much your traditional fantasy novel type thing for the most part. Combat was my biggest worry, if I'm honest. I was deeply concerned it would be too reliant on this post-Kingdom Hearts style of combat. Certainly, it has some similarities with that other Square title. It does have its own identity and style of gameplay. Feels fast, feels like it can be mastered, feels easy and difficult at the same time. It's fun, really, really fun. And I was actually totally wrong to be worried. If you love Devil May Cry, you'll be happy. If you love games like Punishing Gray Raven or Honkai Impact 3rd and you've never played a Final Fantasy, this might be a great entry for you. Easy to learn, hard to master, I'd say. Okay, that's everything that's non-spoilery. Now let's dive into the spoiler content. Guys, holy fucking shit. The icon battle at the end between Phoenix and Ifrit, did you see that part near the end? You know the part? Holy balls. It's fucking crazy. I literally sat there at my desk with my jaw on the floor. Holy crap. I'm still in shock even after 24 hours. That was like Last of Us levels of traumatizing. I can't believe that. Anyway, so I want to break down a lot of the music that I heard here. There are so many gems and literally it just goes and goes and goes. I'll move kind of quickly as this is an impressions video and save my big breakdowns emotionally for the individual tracks when I cover them on the channel. But let's get right into it with this opening Final Fantasy theme sequence. This opening is absolutely nuts. Right away, we launch with this crystal theme, but it's unlike any crystal theme I've personally ever heard. Tension is instant with this rhythmic tempo. Those strings and the dissonance and the horns, it feels so foreboding, doesn't it? And then wham! We're face to face with these 2 icons of fire. The strings take off, those Soken horns and drums, it's so fast. It is cool, right? But then we add this fucking chorus. As we descend, this men's chorus is so violent and tense. It's like Liberi Fatali on sports-enhancing drugs. Phoenix and Ifrit fall down this mass, and you feel this conflict here in the music. Protector fighting protectee, brother fighting brother. What really blows me away now, too, after playing the first few hours, is Clive staring into the fire. He knows what happened. This is obviously in the future. Whenever it happened, he knows he's a murderer. He knows he committed fratricide. We'll find out how he gets from point A to point B and winds up with this lot, but what an opening, right? It's insane. Skipping ahead, we have this bubbling intensity. We feel it in the strings. Yet whether or not we realize it yet, this is already the Final Fantasy Crystal theme chord structure being played out, arpeggiated. This bubbling effect is so wonderful because we know we're going on a mission. We know we're moving towards a release and explosion of music. We know that this has to go somewhere. Of course, the question is, when? And then it happens. The music swells, and we come face to ear with the Final Fantasy theme. Blood, violence, explosions. We never heard this theme this way before, as far as I can remember. Militaristic, violent. I do think later on, when we're meeting these other cast of characters like Benedicta, I do think that we could have shifted the music a little bit while we're having this sort of roundtable discussion. It's odd how it just sort of ends when these two meet up and they kiss and have this intimate moment, but that's honestly such a minor thing, it doesn't really matter. So this is cool. I love the silence here. Just dialogue, no music, builds a lot of tension in its own way.
Wait. Something's not right.
And then, here's Titan. We get that tremolo in the strings before we hear another male chorus. But did you catch this? Titan's singers are sharp rhythmically. Strong, rhythmic, grounded.
Titan.
Then we see Shiva, and that slips away and we get a singular solo soprano.
And look who's here to greet the bastard. Come on.
In a way, it's almost this plaintive song. It's sensual. I love the sensuality in this singing. Only then it pivots back to Titan. It's menacing, dominant. What really struck me here is that while this music is occurring, these icons are actually killing everyone in their way, friend or foe, which is sort of an interesting concept about these icons and what they represent. You see this multiple times in this prologue. It's almost like the little guy soldier's life is meaningless in the face of these giant beings, even if they're allies. Anyone who stands in their way will be killed, and there's little regard for even those that are allies. This fight between Titan and Shiva was absolutely one of the highlights for me of this opening section. So stylistic and fantastic to watch. When Titan punches that ice, there aren't enough superlatives to describe how I felt when I saw that scene. It's so cinematic and so cool. This is a nice little Rosalith theme.
Do you yield?
Did you notice Joshua has red mage coloring? That's fun. This theme feels nice and big too in its own way. I like the bagpipes. Still has like this sad quality to it, oddly. Nothing here is really peppy or optimistic. And I guess that makes sense when you consider that the whole continent is about to go to war, especially with that blight on its way, and I guess the Imperial forces. Is there a tradition in Final Fantasy that every battle theme has to have the same rhythmic opening? Is that just like an inside thing that only those of us that have played a lot of Final Fantasies will recognize? This sounds so much like the Final Fantasy VIII battle theme, almost unironically so, like it's a nod to it, with the same instrumentation almost.
Stay calm.
Typical march with horns, entrance music, we are soldiers, dun 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 dun. You gotta have it in a game like this, especially with this medieval vibe going. Okay, so active time lore, I love it. Especially stuff like this can be so overwhelming. You want lore? Here are your tabs for you. It's great, it's simple, it's efficient. I can't believe this ever made the rounds in gaming journalism as a bad thing, but then again, that was just like one particular publication. Okay, so now we really slow down and we move away from a lot of this militaristic stuff or these epic battle themes, and this is beautiful. The shot of the moon, which we see twice, both when Clive is speaking to Joshua and now, we know Soken is damn good at writing for piano. And this particular piece is a return to form of that. I think of flow from Final Fantasy XIV. I think of the different versions of flow that we hear throughout the big moments of Final Fantasy XIV. Using only the piano is a genuinely lovely thing to do here because it's coupled with this like odd melancholy. The right hand and left hand are dancing together. There's a give and take with both hands, and they alternate with melody. There's this subtle sadness throughout this, regardless of how beautiful it is. It actually almost reminds me of Aerith's theme at one point, which is really interesting. It almost sounds like there's the same musical notes that are being played near the end of it. But then there's this moment that Clive nearly puts his hand on her. Then we get this almost romantic sound quality. I don't know if they're brother and sister, I'm not positive, but it's weird because there's like a playful bit of gentility, but there are sharps in here in the piano that allude to almost doing something, but of course not, especially when he doesn't fully put his hand on her back.
Good night, Clive.
Okay, so this map theme. This is really interesting too because it gives us the crystal theme again, but we don't lose the sound of war. I really like this play on the prelude. Rhythmic but slow, reminding us this is a land on the brink of destruction. I was expecting this game to be open world actually, but then I really kind of enjoyed this Stillwind Marsh section that is surprisingly linear. Reminded me a bit of what I've played of Final Fantasy XIII. Stillwind Swamp Marsh is an interesting sound experience because it isn't as bombastic as we've heard up till now. And I really appreciate this women's chorus that is very full of wonderment, and as we move into this peaceful piano ballad, like there is this feeling of mystery, but it's surprising because it's more curious than dark. You would consider it would be dark given that the Blight has destroyed this old village of Stillwind, but it really is a kind of warm and, mysterious almost. And actually, the solo soprano singing her little melody feels more like a reflection than anything else. The best part for me are these damn goblins. So instead of having a traditional battle theme that you would expect whenever you engage in combat, which we do have a battle theme, we actually have this dynamic music shift, the kind we really only get to enjoy in video games, where we have a battle section, but also a normal walking around section. We hear this a lot in games like Fire Emblem, where you have the rain and thunder versions or the whatever other kind of version they're called.
Goblins. So the reports were true.
So it's like you have the slow theme that is for exploration, and then you have the battle theme that is a bit more upbeat, peppy, a little bit more rhythmic, and that's that battle section. I love the use of strings here too, and then this quick shift back to the slow with the soprano chorus and piano. Super ethereal. So did you catch this by chance? In classic Final Fantasy fashion, we have multiple different battle themes, right? We have regular enemies, which seem to have this dynamic overworld music. I don't know if they'll get their own little battle themes. Higher concern enemies, and big boss battle themes. Here, like in this case with this giant goblin and troll enemy.
Shit! He's invited a friend! On your feet, Sir Wade.
Here it comes!
This is battle music, right? Big drums, the horns. I love the tension in the horns here with those trills especially. And I also appreciate giving the brass section the main melody here. It's galvanizing, and even though we're fighting something that could kill us, we still feel this sense of confidence, right? The brass represents the danger in front of us. But the strings and chorus represent the struggle to defeat the enemy, the hope for a chance of success, for an opening. I bet there's actually going to be more variations on the battle themes as we continue through the game. I would not be surprised by that, especially given how big this game's soundtrack is going to be. And then of course we get to the Morble. So f***ing epic.
It's far south.
Now we're in the thick of it, right? Listen to the drum rhythm. This is next level. This is the big boss. The way the strings are dancing here, what's great about this is it isn't actually non-stop. There are sections that cause certain emotions and certain feelings. There's an ebb and a flow. Sure, yes, we have this intense moment with the horns, but then we also have this quiet, contemplative moment with the strings. This is a great example of this tug and war that the song is supposed to represent. It's a battle, back and forth, back and forth. And actually, this whole section here is one of my favorite melodic ideas so far. It's a really nice loop, and I wonder if I'll still be into it at the 40-hour mark. It's one of those iconic boss battle themes that I've grown to love, especially when I consider Final Fantasy VII's big boss battle themes, or Final Fantasy VIII's and Final Fantasy X's. You know, reflecting on this quiet moment between Joshua and Clive after we see the end of the prologue, I actually think there's a lot of preamble pain in this track. That pits, the heart melody line here is actually painting with sadness. The piano that plays when Joshua speaks of his inability to lead their people, they love each other so much, despite not realizing what's to come. Even though Clive does try his best with that clarinet sound in the background to inspire his younger brother.
To drag us back from the brink. The fate of Rosaria sits on the dominant shoulders. It is your duty to bear that burden.
One of the most intense moments, obviously, of this prologue is the moment that Joshua becomes the Phoenix. It gives me chills after watching this again and again. I've watched it a couple times now. We hear the swelling of the tension. Joshua finds himself. We get our first glimpse at how difficult it is to maintain and control the power embedded in these dominants. This whole sequence is genuinely difficult to watch, if I'm honest. Fight between brother and brother. It's a fantastic setup for what's to come.
Phoenix.
Do you notice that when Clive sees this man on fire, the horns here are full of foreboding, of danger? In this moment, we hear "find the flame" in the lower brass as he says a second icon of fire, but that's impossible. It's like Clive, being denied by his mother and being rejected by the Phoenix, suddenly still finds within himself a version of himself. What a fantastic introduction to Ifrit, despite the fact that this is another case of icons killing people they're allied with, but whatever. I'm actually really excited to hear the rest of the icon themes, especially Bahamut and Odin, because I wonder if each icon is going to get their own themes, like Find the Flame is for Clive. Okay, so now we're back to the prologue. I love hearing this fire in the strings, this swirling maelstrom of two icons battling to the death. Well, literally. This tension in these strings is phenomenal. The men's chorus we heard all the way at the very beginning of this prologue takes over. So masculine, so virile. That whirling of fire as they fall further and further down into this giant hole. That chorus lick we heard so many times when Ifrit lands on that platform, this actually has a lot of similarities to Find the Flame here as well, but I find that the slower singing, that actually has more tension in a way. It's actually even sad. There's desperation in the strings too. We feel Joshua's desire to protect everyone, despite killing a bunch of them when he transformed. Anyways, I don't want to watch the rest of that because it's deeply depressing, but I am so hyped. If it's not obvious, I really feel that we're seeing Soken in a whole new light here. Those of you that know him from his work in Final Fantasy XIV, it's always been good, but this, I genuinely feel that Soken, like I said, could win the Grammy for this. There's something so powerful about the music that I've heard so far. This is a sound column like we haven't heard yet from Soken, and I'm really excited. And I get that people might be a little grumpy that we're not using real instruments when we've had them in other Square Enix titles recently, but this is great. This is going to be really good. And I can't wait to no-life the crap out of this game when it comes out next week, and really deep dive in some of these tracks that I end up falling madly in love with for weeks to come. So stay tuned for more music analysis of Final Fantasy XVI here. Thanks.